Hello, welcome again to the CyberDudes podcast, your number one stop for cybersecurity news, or at least I hope it is. I am Robin Thornton. I am joined as usual by Omar Sangarima, and this is actually episode 13, despite what I said last week because I got really jumbled up. So yeah, that's fun. Unlucky number 13. What we could have potentially done is kind of just skipped over it and done the 12-14 thing like they do with elevator floors.
The floors,
high-rise
right?
floors.
And
yeah.
fans could have dissected why that was, read into it a little bit, and then yeah. But
Hooked up some conspiracy theory because that would be very on brand with
it would.
the modern day. How are you doing?
Oh, it's a lovely Sunday in the Northeast U.S. It is. It's great. It's football weather. Watching American football as well as real football this weekend, so it's a banner weekend for me.
Yes, indeed. Interesting enough, I'll have to catch up on the scores because I want to see how Arsenal and Liverpool are doing. Right, let's get into the news. I got a little bit excited with the quickfire news, so this is going to be quickfire. So first things first, Apple will pay security researchers up to $1 million to hack its private AI cloud. That is from TechCrunch. I imagine not just anybody will be able to do that kind of thing. So by all means, don't think that you're going to sort of be able to log into that little system and bag yourself $1 million just like that. You are going to have to be a smart cookie. Microsoft warns foreign disinformation is hitting the US elections from all directions. That is from Wired. No shit, Sherlock. Key question in there, as you said last episode, cui bono? Who benefits?
Okay.
And please don't be as reductive, folks, as this is what the libs have always wanted, or this is a fascist play to make the Handmaid's Tale come true. Think a little bit harder about that. Think outside US borders, right? That's where most of this is coming from. Unprecedented interference targets Moldova's elections. This is from Recorded Future. So see, it's not just liberal arts college woke brigade and the truck driving, gun toting nationalist white males who are the problem. Moldova's got election.
I'm just happy they're having elections. All right,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yes, but yes, so Moldova's got election tampering by foreign agents issues as well. Exposed United Nations database left sensitive information accessible online. That's from Wired. This is pretty unsurprising, as we've worked with someone who was fairly senior in IT at the UN, and let's just say it's a bit of a shit show. They're all spying on each other all the time in the same building. What do you expect?
It's crazy.
Yeah. Meta brings back face scanning to combat scams and account hacking. That is from The Verge. Number one, probably about time. But if this comes to fruition, it means fairly soon I'll still be able to say, unless you're a big money generating account, Meta is still not going to give a shit about whether you actually get your account back from the scammers. But at least you might have a few more ways to stand a fighting chance than you currently do, because apparently that system is garbage.
Oh, it's terrible. It's awful. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. And then finally, Russia says unprecedented cyber attack hits foreign ministry amid BRICS summit. This is from Reuters. I have literally just one word to say about this. Good.
Yeah. I mean, welcome.
Yes. Spotlight stories. Omar, what have you got for us this week?
Well, it's going to be the same tune that I toot for a few more weeks now, right? We're about 2 weeks out from D-Day. I'm getting
swap you out for a different broken record?
Listen, no, I mean, Omar Dead Horse Sangarima, that's my Native American name, right? And considering that 23andMe says that I'm primarily Native American,
Really?
I'll go with it. Yeah. My dad, primarily my dad, right, with the South American connection there, but maybe some more on my mom's side. It's more pirate, so watch out, right? Anyone who gets in doing deals with me, yeah, exactly, right. I have reparations and a bone to pick with very much the entire of the Western world, lineage wise. But this one is going to be, again, it's going to be what I tried out in a surprise to nobody. Next week, it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to probably pick up something else about the election safety, just because, Ask Moldova, right? You haven't made it until your elections are tampered with. So welcome to the big show. This is something that's always going to happen. However, what I love that CISA's folks are saying is, hey, you might have a local office that goes down. You might get some sort of interference somewhere because most of the grid of many nations is held together by prayers and duct tape. It's going to happen. However, overall, in terms of swaying the complete outcome of the election, fat chance. So don't not vote because you think it's all garbage. There's upstream political implications in terms of I'm pissed off with the two-party system in general.
Hmm.
Don't get me started there. But brass tacks, the election is safe. Now, I make a real distinction when I say the election is safe, but your stories, of course, highlight, Robin, that misinformation still is at an all-time high, and I don't think that goes down. It's almost like inflation. It's just a new floor of fuckery, and you're just going to
Yep.
have to learn how to discern. It's an arms race. We're going to have to do it with AI. I think the barriers to entry are a heck of a lot lower now for any of that malfeasance, as you pointed out in our discussion last week. Very, very smart point where it's easier to get into the disinformation game because all you have to do is set a couple of LLMs on a trajectory and then let it go.
Which, interestingly enough,
Yeah,
some of the biggest troll farms from
everywhere.
5, 6, 7 years ago were actually in Moldova.
Now,
And it wasn't LLM stuff, but there were. I
listen,
remember reading about large scale troll farms in Moldova, and it was the kind of stuff that was perpetuating all the Sandy Hook conspiracy nonsense and that
exactly.
sort of thing. And they
Which,
do work with
listen,
people in the States.
it's good. The thing is, it's good money. I think we're an undercurrent, a recurring
Yeah.
theme, an undercurrent of a lot of our discussion here over the past month. It happens because it's good money. In many situations, especially when it's systematized and standardized
Hmm.
to the degree that we know it can be in some of these instances, it's going to make cash. So your senses are always going to be assaulted. This has been something that's been going on since the dawn of time, I think, right?
Hmm.
You've seen misinformation on the battlefield. I think the battlefield just expands now with the way that we're all interconnected. But please, for the love of everything you hold dear, it's not as though, at least at this stage, I'm not making a blanket statement for the next one or the one after that or what have you. It's wait and see, and I'll examine the facts when they come. But right now, your vote is safe. The election, at least overall, is safe. It's not, and I stress this because sadly, I didn't think I would have to, but after what happened on January 6th,
Hmm.
last time, we're we're looking a little third worldy here. So I'd really like it if, for whatever happens, whether the person I want to win wins or not, I just want it to be a bit classier of a transition either way. That's what
Hmm.
I would like. And I don't want at least this corner of the conversation that we happen to find ourselves in to add fuel to the fire on either side. Okay, it's
Yeah.
nonsense. Please, it's the vote is safe. Go out there and vote. Exercise your right. Other folks would kill to have the ability to do so. I can name 10 regions off the top of my head. You're more international than I am. You could probably name 20. You're a little more erudite there in that regard. But
Don't know
goodness
about
gracious. But goodness gracious. I mean, you sound smarter. But goodness gracious, man. This is this it, the it's not going to be rigged to this extent. Will there be attempted fuckery? Absolutely. The same as people rattle doors and windows when they're casing out a place to try to
that. Yeah.
break into. But still, we're pretty rock solid when it comes to this sort of stuff. So go out and vote.
And in the there will be fuckery, much probably in the same way that it was found out that there was fuckery back in 2020, but
Yeah.
more perpetrated by those who were not the subject of the accusations.
Of course. That's a nice way to say it. I like that. That's classy.
Yeah,
You say
yeah.
things so much classier than I do, Robin. You really do.
And there does tend to be a lot of double negatives, and sometimes it can confuse.
Sure.
I will admit I was kind of thinking the other day about, because obviously there's early in-person voting, there's mail-in
Yep.
ballots, all that
Hmm.
sort of stuff. I was trying to think of if I were to want to do it, what kind of conspiracy could I push
Sure.
that would not be in Donald's best interest. Like, and the kind of thing that actually would be believed. But
Sure.
hey, I will leave that in my head as a thought experiment, so as not to get
safer.
accused of anything.
Sure, absolutely.
My spotlight story here. Oh, this is a biggie. From TechCrunch. United Health says Change Healthcare hack affects over 100 million people, the largest ever US healthcare data breach, and arguably probably one of the largest data breaches in total. So far, yes, this is the worst day of my life. It's the worst day of your life so far. Very recently, this last week, first time United Health Group, who's the parent company of Change Healthcare, has put a specific number on the affected individuals of the data breach. Previously, it being just a substantial proportion of people in America, which, I mean, is bad enough as it is. I think there's one more data breach that has been bigger than this in terms of total number of people affected, and that is Equifax's major screw up 7 years ago. Yeah. However, I think the potential breadth of the information adds another dimension to this, which arguably you could say this is probably worse. Because as I say to our colleagues actually on a regular basis, the healthcare data piece is a real different game than it is your financials or your banking or anything like that, because your healthcare data cannot be changed, right? You are who you are. It is it's immutable.
Your blood type, exactly.
Exactly. You can't change your blood type, your diagnoses, eye color, date of birth, anything like that. Not unless you go into witness protection.
I like the conspiracy hooks you throw out for listeners every so often. It makes my heart happy, Robin.
I just lob a grenade in every now and then. I did see I saw again a meme earlier on that was best thing to do with conspiracy theorists is just one up them. And so they say things like the moon landing was a fake, and you go, "Oh, you believe in the moon?"
But you know what's crazy is I have friends like that I'm not quite sure if they're on the one up side or the belief side. Shout out to my good colleague Danielle, who I hope we have on down the road. Let's remember that and bring her on and ask her some conspiracy fun time. She's a pro. Cool. Yeah.
You make a note of that one then.
Yeah.
Yes. So very, very large data breach, stolen data, and this is from a ransomware attack. The perpetrators we will unmask a little later on in the story. The stolen data varies by individual, but Change has previously confirmed that it includes personal information such as names, addresses, date of birth, phone number, and email addresses. Okay, all right, fair, kind of par for the course. Government identity documents, not good, including social security numbers, not good, but you can change it. Driver's license numbers, same thing. Passport numbers, it's only going to cause you a problem for 10 years at most, one would hope. But the stolen health data includes diagnoses, medications, test results, imaging and care and treatment plans, health insurance information, as well as financial banking information found in claims and payment data taken. Obviously now, so this is a big problem. Stolen health data is a big problem for two reasons. Number one, it's not just Change Healthcare that has been extorted for money in terms of safe return of this information or assurances around deletion. They can now actually come after you and they can blackmail you for that. This happened to a hospital in Oregon back in November of 23, I believe, where it goes from double threat ransomware to triple threat, because then they go after the patients. There's also the other angle, which I know you'll find this familiar because we both watched John Oliver, but the aspect of healthcare fraud specifically for things like hospices, palliative care, end of life care. Because if you, and you're remembering this, if you are enrolled in palliative care, in end of life care, anywhere in the country, if your insurance sees that, you are now no longer ineligible for curative care, because why would you bother curing anything for somebody who's dying anyway? Sure. So now you don't have health coverage if somebody is taking out palliative care policies in your name with exactly this kind of information as they could. So yeah, real big issue. This has been attributed to the Alpha V Black Cat gang, a Russian-speaking ransomware and extortion gang, who later took credit for the cyber attack. Funny thing here, so they did it as a subcontracting kind of thing. So they went to somebody else and to actually do the attack, and then Alpha V Black Hat would do the extortion piece of this. The ransomware gang leaders later vanished with 22 million ransom that had been paid by UHG, stiffing the contractors who actually carried out the hack, so they ended up with no money. So then the contractors took the data they stole from Change, formed a new group, and then extorted a second ransom from UHG, which doesn't necessarily, I don't think it says here if they paid it or not, but it's one of these things where it's like, oh, okay, well, you've already paid one ransom, so like, oh yeah, we've deleted the data. Oh wait, no, you didn't, because why would you trust criminals? So there's no evidence that these cyber criminals actually subsequently deleted the data, and other extortion gangs such as Lockbit have been shown to hoard data even after the victim was paid, because why not? Retain the leverage. There's no. It's not like physical evidence where you can go, hey, look, here's a video of it being burned, right? You just copy it onto another drive, and hey, look, there's no proof that it isn't still out there in the hands of people who shouldn't have it. Now, the real kicker on this one. In April, UHG's CEO, Andrew Whitty, confirmed that the cybercriminals broke into one of its employees' systems using stolen credentials that were not protected by multi-factor authentication. Why?
It's
Bonehead
2023. It's 2024. MFA is not that hard to put into practice anymore. It hasn't been for a while.
And especially when you're the size that these guys are, which is a point I'll get onto in a minute. But by gaining access to a critical internal system using only a stolen password, the gang was able to reach other parts of Change Healthcare's network, which is lateral movement, privilege escalation, and deploy the ransomware. So they have since rolled out MFA, but it's very much closing the stable door after the horse is bolted. Better that they have it now, but great. That's a real comfort to everybody who's had their information taken. And to the point about it's not that hard to do, it's also not that expensive to do for a company that has revenues of $371 billion and makes $22 billion in profit on that. Whitty himself, the CEO, makes $23.5 million in executive compensation in 2023. Now, for all of you who are saying, where's all my money going when it goes to Ukraine? This is what you should be more bothered about. Because this goes into a black hole. And this is going into a system that is completely incompetent. And those dollars that disappear could easily be paying for better quality healthcare for you. And this pales in comparison.
Cheaper healthcare.
Or Ukraine pales in comparison to what has been done here. This is actual money as opposed to surplus military equipment.
And goods, yep.
So if you're really pissed off about Ukraine, you're barking up the wrong tree.
What gets me when I see these things, you brought up this one, you brought up the other terrible hack there. It's supply chain. It's you're not the thing with I remember with Change when it was occurring, when it was live streaming the chaos, was prescription ability for many providers was taken offline.
It's a third of the country's capacity.
Right. And it's not something that you immediately, at least I didn't, and we're in this industry and in this particular niche to boot. But it's now something on the threat model that you go, wait a second, are things so interconnected that tugging at some string over here could kill the ability to get needed drugs to people that need them? And who thinks, oh wait, I need to have a backfill surplus of my insulin just in case my providers get hit with some ransomware? That should not be on the minds of any patients and any folks that depend on this industry whatsoever, especially to your point, where this amount of money is being thrown around. Whitty should have had all of his money taken away. And it should, but the thing is, there's no liability in that sense when you have a systemic set of issues. I'm not sitting here going, and far be it for me to say, yes, let's loop in CISOs and give them individual liability, because I'm positive. I'm going completely out on a limb here, but I'll bet good money on this fact that there was some set of cyber people in this organization that were jumping up and down for years saying, this is horrific. this is terrible. We can't work like this. And if they said it too loudly, they were sent to the other room. And the only way they would get a seat at any sort of decision-making table was to shut the hell up. This is absolutely bonkers. An industry and especially change itself being that big and not putting in something so fundamental. It's like understanding that, hey, I should probably buckle up as I'm in a car. At this stage of the game, we know that MFA is just table stakes if you remotely care about the data that you're charged with stewarding.
Good job, Andrew Whitty. You've got Omar mad.
I'll leg lock him. Like I'll roll up to his house and cripple him. Like this is terrible.
I think you've got a point. I think they should forfeit their executive compensation. They should now give fine salary, whatever it is, whether it's like if it's like 800-900 or I don't know 2 million base or whatever like that. Just fine. Sure. You have that, but all of your options and all that sort of stuff gone. Yeah. Nope. Yep. Nope. Use it to compensate the people who you've screwed. The what was the final bit that I had on this? Oh, yes, here we go. It's somewhat antitrust stuff. So I can kind of understand how the Change Healthcare piece is being, because it was merged into UHG in 2022. So I can kind of understand how something like the MFA piece got overlooked, because mergers of companies that size are a bit complicated. They are very, very complicated. It's not an excuse, but I can certainly see how that did get overlooked. But this is serious negligence going on here. And to be fair, the antitrust authorities did try and sue UHG for this merger because they considered it anti-competitive and
dangerous.
Dangerous. And to have one company having access to about half of all Americans' health insurance information seemed somewhat foolhardy. But a judge cleared it and approved them, and I wonder how many very, very fancy Wagyu steak dinners he was taken out for.
Judge, what are you talking about? Judges are completely implacable, scrupulous forces for good.
And sober too.
How dare you? Yeah, sober, exactly. Good Lord.
Hi, Clarence.
That's exactly who I was thinking about. We both definitely watched John Oliver. I was thinking, who got hit with a Winnebago in order to allow this to happen?
Okay, right. Moving on to the feature for today. But before we do that, if you are enjoying this episode, please do hit the like and subscribe button. If you're on Spotify, please do consider leaving us a nice juicy 5-star review, because we've got a few on there now, or a 5-star rating, and it's actually driven the impressions and the views way up. So that's fun and nice, and I really enjoy that. Going into this week's feature, it should have been an interview with a contact of ours, Kenneth Ellington. We had a bit of a scheduling snafu. So we're in somewhat uncharted territory, and Omar suggested let's go wing it. I said, okay, fine, as long as you run it. And now I'm kind of scared.
Listen, come on now. We're good pals.
I'm not scared because of any doubts about your competence. I have no doubts that you will be able to wing it far better than I would. I'm just scared about what you've got in store for me.
No, not at all. This is not. Listen, and anybody listening as a potential guest, we're not in the mode of gotchas. So we got to practice what we preach. We have to be nice to each other, else any potential guests will go, if that's what they do to each other, good grief, I'm not jumping on. I'm going to miss that. That's a hit piece there. Really, I remember just getting into, when we were thinking about doing this, starting it up, all those 13 episodes ago now, right? I was thinking, listen, the thing that drove me definitely into the arms of a yes answer were genuinely just enjoy shooting the shit with you about something we're both obsessed with, which is cybersecurity. So I wanted to kick it off, and it's going to be the only question here. So surprised to nobody here. Only one, just one cue here. You've been in the game how long now? It's 2024.
In cyber, so here's the problem where just one question, because it gets expansive and then I just can go off on my. So, well, I graduated university 2013. So I'm 11 years in. I'm 11 years into career and 6 in cyber. Yeah, 6.5.
There you go. So 6.5 in cyber. You've seen a bit at this point.
Mhm.
In 2025, what do you
Yeah.
want to see more of or less of for the industry? Take it anywhere you want, man, because this is what I enjoy doing day to day. Let's give our listeners a little insight.
I want to see more executive ownership and appreciation for why this is everybody's responsibility. Because I think that's the one thing that, well, not the one thing, but I think that's a big thing at an organizational level that just gets slept on until you have a cyber attack. And at that point, everybody realizes just how unpleasant and painful that it actually is. And that causes senior management, or pushes senior management into not just taking it seriously, but taking it personally as well. And by that, I mean, not like, oh, you cyber attacked me, I'm going to go Punisher and Retribution on you and all that sort of stuff. I mean, in the sense that they actually do take steps to be seen to practice what the CISO preaches, you know, and properly lead by example. Now, even then, not everybody does this after they've had a cyber attack, but it's what they should do. If you are in a position, if you're in a leadership position and you're expecting all of your people to be hyper vigilant around passwords, multi-factor authentication, not clicking sketchy phishing emails, that sort of stuff, but you are openly, or not openly, but you are routinely telling your IT department to remove security safeguards on your devices for the sake of convenience, I'm sorry, you deserve everything that you get when your people aren't compliant and you yourself get hacked because you're asking. Well, you're asking for it. Do I really want to? Do I really want to go there with that one?
Listen, see, this is. I mean, if there's any note of fear, it's probably for these answers. Right? We walk ourselves sometimes into some wild places, but I want to bring it back to what the original point there. Do you think that the better mechanism to engender that ownership is it through business alignment or is it through regulatory oversight and prodding from the outside? Or both or neither?
Both and neither.
Okay.
I'll tell you now. I'll tell you what I mean. I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I think very conveniently in what we just talked about in that with that Change Healthcare thing, I think you need to have company boards, non-executive directors, etc., the guys who sit on the remuneration committee saying, if you do get done and you meet a certain threshold that we have set as to say, for instance, you have got systems that are missing multi-factor authentication, and that's how the guys get in, as happened with Change Healthcare, we are not sorry, you're forfeiting your bonus.
Sure.
And it's literally, you know, it could be just C-suite, it could be C-suite and a level down, it could be 2 levels down in management. That entire top tier, you could say everybody above certain grade loses their bonus, you know, and have that and make that the norm, that be the industry norm. And that, I tell you what, that'd straight up sort things out.
It'll be a quick answer.
Oh yeah, you're damn right. And I think that's it's not too dissimilar in my mind to the Warren Buffett position of, it's very, very clear how to sort out the budget deficit in the US. The moment you have a deficit, every single member of Congress and Senate is ineligible for re-election. And you watch how quickly that deficit would shrink.
Everybody
might be a little bit reductive. Yeah. Now, that might be a little bit reductive because I'm not sure that the scenario would be quite as simple as that, because what you would likely get is just like masses of cuts in public spending for things that are essential for many, many people, as opposed to scything the defense budget, which is the single biggest line item on the federal budget, by the way. But yeah, I think you talk to people's or you threaten people's wallets. Threaten leadership's wallets in that regard, and that's the thing. I think regulation is appropriate to the degree that it sets baseline standards for what is acceptable. And maybe that's where you end up then also with, maybe that's the regulation that needs to happen, as opposed to going very, very draconian, saying you must do this, you must do that, you must do the other. There's a lot of people really, really hated Frank Dodd when it came in after, or they hate Frank Dodd now. It was a very necessary thing, I think, after 2008, because what happened with subprime was absolutely wild. But there's people who really, really dislike that now. They think say that it's wasteful, it's restrictive, it stifles innovation, all that sort of stuff. And I can see that argument. I can see the underlying basis of that argument. I don't necessarily know whether I agree with the specific application of it, but if regulation is too strict and too draconian, then it does stifle innovation. It stops people being able to experiment. It limits how you can deploy capital. And that in of itself is a problem. But maybe the one regulation that does need to go in is that companies over a certain size or a certain revenue, whatever, companies that are big enough to have an executive remuneration board, that is one thing that must be in there no matter what. And there must be, you align to NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology kind of baselines in terms of what should be implemented for the sake of protecting an organization against a cyber attack. If they don't want to do it, that's perfectly fine. They've got the choice, right? They can risk their bonuses if they don't want to implement the technology. But if they do want to secure that remuneration, then they better put in those baseline standards. And it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, well, and just to reiterate that point, it's not one of those things where it's saying, oh, you're big government, you're making us do this. No, we're not. We're just saying, if you want your bonus package, you have to do it. If you want to play with fire or gamble on that chance, you're perfectly within your rights to.
Yeah, and if the math turns out to be where enough years go by that they're doing maybe below baseline, but they're getting by, or they're doing just enough, maybe not quite at those standards and baselines, but the math works out where they make more on bonuses than they would potentially lose out on fines here or there over enough years. Cool, great. I get the head nod. Yeah, and I get the head nod towards the different sizes, because that's one place where
I talked about that last week.
Yeah, and I've personally softened even on a little bit. I got into a nice lively debate during fantasy football watch party, and it was and it does with smaller organizations, it can absolutely choke out those folks from even giving it a try. Some would argue, I've seen the discussion, say for example, for something like a SOC 2, for a certain size of organization, that's tough. And then the counter argument is, of course, well, if you want to be playing at certain tables, then the stakes are just going to be a bit higher, and that's going to be self-correcting. If the juice is worth the squeeze, you'll find a way to make SOC 2 or ISO or what have you, whatever the market is demanding that you have in order to put surety forth about your practices, at least to some extent, with how you steward the data that you're going to be playing with. I get that, but you're correct. If you have some sort of regulatory enforcement where it sets a floor, and then from there, potentially anything above and beyond that you do there could be some sort of competitive advantage. Because to the point, going back to one of the stories you brought up this week, that's a very gaudy, amazing headline surrounding the $1 million for the AI cloud that Apple's putting forth.
Yeah.
They're late to the party. They know this. So I think that they're having to go in a direction where it says, hey, we're doing it the Apple way. When we do debut it, it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be so sublimely beautiful of an experience. You're going to wonder how the hell you did AI any other way but the Apple way. And this sort of thing absolutely helps them to position themselves that way. They understand that. They realize that there was a discursive space in the market to provide, hey, we're the privacy big tech company. Now, you and I both know it's a game of relativity. When it comes to that sort of thing, you're still, of course, bleeding data left, right, and center. You're just not doing it as wantonly as you would on other platforms. So I think they've been able to, of course, capture that and say, hey, listen, there's outsized benefit to doing a little bit more, or at least being perceived to do a little bit more in this privacy space, in this data stewardship space. So we're going to go for it. But I think what really, and I've been pushing for this since I think episode 1 or pre-episodes when we would just shoot the shit during work hours here. There's no federal regulation. There is no federal standard. There's no anything as a national floor. Once GDPR was put out there, everybody still didn't quite know what the heck was going on.
They still
until
don't.
They start. It's sure, but it sounds more serious, and it is taken more seriously than prior because it's cut a couple companies and made them bleed some dollars. That's really the only way I think you get folks to really start taking that to heart. It might be an external imposition at first, and then eventually a company realizes, hey, like you said, either saves bonuses for top brass, or it becomes something that they can put on the package and say, we care, because they've found that adhering to care gets them more money. However it is, I'm not here to be completely like the government needs to just come in and shake people up, because I don't think that quite works. But we need some sort of cohesive, non-patchwork nonsense. I'm happy at New York State's stance in a lot of these regards. I'm looking forward to getting under the hood of certain processes because of regulation that's coming from on high at the state level, but also it really then makes me harken back to, but there's nothing cohesive nationally that guides the country in a way to take data protection seriously. And that's a gap that we keep seeing exploited here, there, and everywhere. You might think that it's really immoral to sell data, but in a lot of instances, it's not illegal to harvest data and then repackage it and sell it. That's why it's such a great business. And until it's not, why the hell wouldn't you do it in certain instances?
Yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, it can be incredibly useful, incredibly powerful, and you can de-anonymize, because when you talk about like on a law of large numbers sort of basis, and I know there are. I don't think I know personally probably some people who are very of the mindset of the individual, and you can't generalize people in any way, shape, or form. Otherwise, that's mean and nasty and stripping them of their individualism and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes down to like the intersectionality sort of piece and all that.
Oh my!
But generally speaking, because then it becomes some sort of ist or some sort of ism. But statistics and laws of large numbers proved that with a certain margin of error, people of a particular profile, you can predict their behavior pretty well when you get to tranches of 10, 50, 100,000 people, and then you can use that information. And you just figure out like, okay, well then who fits in that bucket? When let's say for instance, Facebook, Instagram, under the Meta umbrella, they know that I am a white male between the ages of 25 and 36 or whatever it may be. They know where I'm from. They know what kind of industry I work in. They can do all of that sort of stuff. So then they go, okay, well, people of his profile generally like these kinds of things. Like, he works in tech, he's probably going to like sci-fi. You can pitch him sci-fi things and he'll be like, oh yay, okay.
Mhm.
You know, and you know, no secrets, you know, like, look, Razor Crest,
Yeah, exactly.
X-Wing, right? So it's those kinds of things. And yeah, you obviously cannot be completely cut and dry about who somebody is, what their thoughts are and positions and feelings, and what their life experiences have been just based on their demographic profile. But you can make pretty good guesstimations as to what's going to interest them from an advertising sort of perspective. And on a more nefarious perspective, you can, as we discussed previous, you can make pretty good guesstimations as to which buttons to press to get them to vote in the way that you want them to.
Exactly. And that's where I think ultimately, if we're talking about keeping elections sacrosanct in the long term, not just what I was jumping up and down on today, there has to be some sort of floor that we institute nationally of this is what we do with Americans' data. Hands down. I'm not going pie in the sky and I would love to say, let's make it just like GDPR, except with an American flag wrapped around it. I don't think it gets to that point, but something has to be done.
I'd be quite interested to see whether what the legalities would be around, because all this sort of stuff, when you try and stop somebody, or you try and put in any kind of legislation that says you can't do this thing or say this thing to these people, always gets shot down on the First Amendment grounds.
Yeah.
But whether, because it would apply equally to everybody, whether you can say, actually, sorry, you can't use demographics to target political ads. So basically everybody gets all the same sort of stuff. You can't go to certain swing counties and make it so that they get specific areas get only particular kind of advertising.
Entire industries would crumble, though, right?
Well, and no, okay. So there's potentially the lobbying aspect where it gets shut down, because the lobbying aspect to it does crumble. And I'm not saying, again, because obviously nobody, like, I don't want political ads about candidates in North Dakota or anything like that when I live 12 states away or whatever. So you make it geographically relevant. Only people this side of this state border get these messages with relation to this candidate, but all the candidates are there. They're all peddled in a volume of advertising or messaging that is consummate to how much money that they are willing to spend on it. But they cannot say, I want to target white blue collar males with this specific messaging. And then everybody is on the same playing field, because nobody can do it the same way. It's the same sort of thing, like, and this is the one where I do think that it would get shot down, even though it applies to everybody the same way. It would get shot down. Is, I really hate the attack ads. I really despise the way that the sort of, particularly in this country, politics gets reduced down to, it's not about me and my policies. It's just about what nasty shit I can say about the other person.
This terrible person and their harebrained schemes. It alternates, because I get hit by both on my YouTube now. Now when I'm trying to get my morning workouts in and I want to join along with some warm-ups from YouTube, invariably for the past month and a half now, 2 months, it's this guy, then it's no wait, this guy, and it's just fear-mongering on both sides. Listen, I don't know, that's a grander situation, and I do get where you're coming from in terms of, especially this country has just been Picasso's with that stuff for years, unfortunately.
It's so mudslingy, and I don't understand how there's not then, because particularly in the UK, there's been, for several years, there's been just lots of libel, slander type, defamation type cases and things like that. I really don't understand how, most recent been Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Yep.
I don't understand how, when it comes down to those political ads, you don't get an onslaught. And maybe you do, and it's just not talked about, but you don't get an onslaught of suing and countersuing, going, this was a total misrepresentation of who I am. and what I stand for, particularly when it's been like such and such and their radical left agenda is like, I'm sorry, have you looked at the rest of world politics? Like the US in general is quite center right.
It really is.
But there's barely a politician in this country who gets even close to communism.
Which is insane to me, right? Because it's relative to the world stage. You're not even dipping your toes really in what really truly could be, radical leftism. I think, my gut reaction when you said that though, Robin, was I just think if one set of folks start suing, where does it stop? Because everyone's doing it.
Well, this is also the kind of thing that I've even thought this before I moved here. It's like, where do you draw the line? At what point do people actually stop suing each other because of, oh, he said, she said,
when the money runs out, right? When I think the ROI starts, and then also my second knee-jerk reaction to that was good luck finding actual people behind some of these murky political action committees where you would pin, how do you even serve people with subpoenas when you go through and it's a holding company on top of holding company on top of shell organization that it's like, wow, where the heck are they really, follow the money as the Wire said, and you get yourself into trouble as the Wire showed.
Got a subpoena here for Spots McGreely. Oh, look, it's a Cocker Spaniel.
Exactly. This my dog.
Cocker Spaniel sitting in a DC office.
Look at that, right? And he's pulling in 2 a year. But I think we stumbled onto, look at this. We found ourselves into a discussion, right, where yes, we have our niche. Yes, we have what we're looking at on a day-to-day basis, but there's grander implications there, and it's nice to kind of, I think, take a step back.
Are you trying to subtly rub it into my face that I don't need to be all hyper prepared for these podcasts?
Listen, I just, for your mental health, I want it to be a little bit more freewheeling and fun, because again, like I said, the thing that got me into this, I think that tipped the scales here, was just genuinely enjoy these chats. This to me now felt like more of a, and it's
probably
it's
what
funny,
it was intended to be.
Kind of, maybe, but also it just reminded me of the sort of chats that maybe we get into when we should be talking about work stuffs. But this is the type of things that I think drive what we do. I tie what I do day to day in some part, obviously, to the mission of the organization. That's primarily for me, why, and for you as well, right? You've bought in, but there's other points, right, where now, goodness gracious, right, I want to know, maybe one day, hopefully, my kid doesn't have to worry about having their identity stolen as they're going to school. It's just because we don't have floors of measures that are just par for the course. If you're dealing with any sort of PII, PHI, any sort of sensitive information, the last thing I'd want is, heaven forbid, they're availing themselves of services at their local school, and then suddenly, an LA County hack happens, but in our neck of the woods, and suddenly all their private information is out there. That's some gnarly stuff.
I mean, there is an angle that I always look at the data breaches in, that I think once you get to a certain size of data breach, and it probably is around the 50 million upwards sort of territory, I think there is, I start worrying where if there's a potential that I'm implicated in a breach of that size, because actually I find the safety comes in the relative anonymity of being in a data set that large, right? Statistically, it's going to take potentially quite a while for you to get sprung by that kind of thing, by which point, you might be in a situation where, say, for instance, the medical condition itself has been resolved and that's no longer really a problem. You'd be like, oh yeah, okay, fine. I didn't want to shout about it. when I had prostate cancer 5 years ago, but I'm over it now, and I frankly don't give a shit. You can tell whoever you want that I had prostate cancer.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Or whether, it's, you've moved house once or twice since then, and it's like, and then it's obviously a scam because it's like, well, I don't live there anymore.
Sure.
That kind of thing. And obviously it doesn't, that doesn't apply for everybody, because there's got to be a first person who gets targeted out of a data set of 50 million people. But in the realms of probability, I think it's still like, what is it? It's the UK lottery is 1 in 17.9 million chance of winning it, which is way lower than here, because I think here is like 1 in 193 million or something like that.
I was going to say,
but
yeah,
you could have been playing the lottery, something like the UK lottery. At least you could have been paying something like 10 times a week since the caveman days, and there's still like a teeny tiny, like the expectation value on it in terms of how many times you would have won it is still basically 0. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, and okay, yeah, these scams get sent out like 10, 100,000 at a time. But yeah, I'm probably laboring the point here. I feel like it's relatively unlikely in a data set of that large that I'm going to get done out. Plus, I mean, I work in the industry. Like,
sure. I'm
not unscammable, but like I look at things pretty closely.
And it's that, to that point though, it's my worry is really still not quite so much myself, although I'm not ungettable. I'll say that as well. Everyone can get scammed, especially with the tools now at the disposal on either side of the fence. But worried about my parents, worried about older relatives, worried about, again, what's going to happen down the road and how the internet's going to look for my kid. It's just, those things are terrifying in a way. And I think that we're not doing yeoman's work up front to set some sort of foundational, here's table stakes. If you're doing business in this country at a certain level, here's what you have to, and you're dealing with personal data of any sort, here's what you have to do. I think that's, the thing is though, what really bothers me too is I don't see it improving anytime soon, because I just don't see that there's any sort of political hay to be made from it. In fact, I think that the opposite, as you touched on, a lot of those marketing techniques for data brokerages help folks make targeted appeals to certain demographics. So there is a little hint of fatalism I get in my position, but it's still something that I grapple with day to day.
Yeah, I don't know. What was the original question? What do you want to see change next year?
Yes, more or less of.
What do you want to see change next year?
I think it's something that I think is deep rooted in me, and I'll admit, psychologically hate bullies. I think this industry eats its young too much. I think that there's
I know what you mean, but I think that's a really funny way of, or a macabre way of pitching that. I'll let you expand on it for everybody else who's not quite on the same page.
We don't have the right or inclusive, and I mean that not in the buzzwordy way. I truly mean it in a DEI
kind of way.
No, not at all. Although, again, everyone who can do the work is welcome. But that's my baseline statement, and I mean it in that very particular wording. Everyone who can do the work is welcome. Not everyone who can do the work right now, or who can do the work beautifully, or who's amazing, because then what are you doing? You're presupposing that there's an island somewhere with cyber savvy folks that we just haven't discovered, and that's the only people we need to allow into this industry. That's nonsense. I think we're both big sports fans. We understand the value of a great farm system, of a great development system. You have to put the money in to those sorts, and the time and the effort, more so truly, into having great systems where young players are brought in, taught the ropes, allowed to get a taste of the big show, see if it's for them, and if it is, they're brought along with patience, care, love, tenderness, and support, versus if you can't code these 7 languages tomorrow and how dare you not understand my particular niche in the way that
Mhm.
I do after 10, 15, 20 years in, you're worthless and you should go work in a salt mine. I'm being hyperbolic, of course, but I think that there's more of that still than not in this industry. But then at the same time, it's one of those memes where the dog tears up the couch and then the dog is looking at themselves in the mirror and going, why am I like this? It's just we do it to ourselves. And I feel as though with the weird disparity between the amount of people and the amount of skills we need and the industry's general attitude towards working on developing said skills or sourcing said people to help with said skills in a broader format than we're used to.
Yeah.
I don't think I think we keep punching ourselves in the head or biting our own necks.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that there's no easy way to solve that because, and obviously you and I have had this conversation before about interns and apprentices and the actual work, and whenever we do the internship program at our place, the guys who run that always say this is not taking on an intern is not a cakewalk, because it's not like you can just go and throw them a bunch of work and say get on with it and that's that. It's a mentoring role. It's one where teaching is needed because these kids are in college and they don't necessarily know, they might not be specifically majoring in the area that it is that you are that you're recruiting them into, and I'm talking more broadly in terms of technology, not just cybersecurity. So sometimes, and I'll admit, I think a couple of times that I've had one of the interns from that program, it's like I've finished up their summer feeling more tired and behind than I did when they joined on. And part of the motivation, and I'll be totally transparent about this, part of the motivation is to hand off some words, some of the simpler work that just takes up my time. But it's one of those things where it's like, holy shit, this actually feels like one step forward and two steps back. For me, it's a great learning opportunity for them. And I think sometimes when we talk about development of talent in the industry, I think there's a couple of things that are really, really wrong. One is recruiters who do not really know what they're recruiting for. You mentioned the example of you need 10 years experience in certain language or whatever it is. The number of times, it's always funny when you see one of those and it's oh, sorry, we can't take you because you need 10 years experience in this language that was, and they don't know that they're saying this, but it comes out as 10 years experience in this language that was only created 7 years ago by you. Right. Yeah, it's like, oh, that's very interesting asking for that requirement, because I am the foremost expert on it, and also you don't know what you're talking about. The other one is, and I'm going to be a little bit kinder to the crusty, curmudgeonly SOC analysts or security admins who think that the whole problem is the user and they absolutely have no time for working with or dealing with anybody who doesn't know things at least half as well as they do. I'm somewhat sympathetic for those kind of people to a point, because they do work hard, long hours, and probably most of the negative sentiment that comes out of them, be it at the user is stupid level or I don't have time for kids who don't know what they're doing, is large. I would hazard is largely to do with fatigue and burnout.
Sure.
So that's that. But I think like I say, it's no easy fix, because I think if the industry is going to dig itself out of these problems, and one of the best ways of learning to be to do it yourself and learn from people, see the people who know what they're doing, there is going to have to be that knowledge transfer when some of these experienced folk are quite tired. And it's going to be difficult it's going to be hard work for both sides, right? Because it's like these guys having to do it when they're tired and they really sort of don't necessarily want to deal with it. But on the flip side as well, in order to alleviate that situation, the kids who are learning really having to pull the socks up and go, all right, okay, how do I be the best at this that I can without being a burden, I guess. I don't know. That's just me thinking out loud.
No, it absolutely makes sense, and you're spot on. When the perception is I don't have enough time to even handle my own stuff, how the heck am I going to help out with bringing somebody else along? Completely understand it. And that's one of those where, if you're blessed to work in a situation that allows you to even have those thoughts and maybe plan out your work and get ahead on some things and maybe open some time or protect some time to then say, hey, today it's going to be mentorship day. That's
Spend
not
time
always
to make time.
Exactly. It's not always going to be that sort of situation. I'm really enjoying a bit of the shift in the industry where it goes, maybe degrees aren't the absolute bellwether benchmark that you need to get into, because I think we've both said this on different episodes. There's some savages that we know that don't have degrees, and they're absolute murderers.
Yeah.
In the
field.
He's
a total proponent of this. I don't care whether you've got a degree, show me that you can do.
Skills pay the bills.
If you can do what you can do.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah. And this is coming from somebody, myself. I fully admit that. Whenever anybody asks me, hey, how would you get in? I said, I did it backwards. And I don't know. I hope my wife listens to this, but I don't know if she does, but she had it right. I just got too into it. I thought that it was going to be the thing that helped me transition myself because there was no roadmap. And so I went a little too nutty there. Absolutely not needed. And I love that now I think our industry is realizing that on a broader scale. However, I still see, and this really grinds my gears, I still see folks that say, you need to, I don't want to talk to you unless you've put in help desk time, or if you put in sysadmin time, or you've put in the 10 years in IT proper before you even, and it reminds me of, and I'm going to be real nerdy here. Remember Final Fantasy Tactics, where you would bring up certain classes of folks and they had to have certain levels? Okay, sorry, too old, I guess.
My wife's a Final Fantasy. I'm other stuff.
So there was
FIFA.
There you go. Of course, that we can absolutely agree on. But so it's just the concept of you can't even unlock different classes of characters unless you put in levels in this and levels in this and then get there, versus that sort of ossification that there's only those lanes. Again, this is not me saying that folks who have done that don't make amazing cyber professionals when they make the jump. Absolutely. Phenomenal. Yeah. But I don't have, and this is a phrase in Spanish that's coming to me, but it's like, I don't have the face to tell somebody, hey, don't talk to me for 10 years till you've done the trench work.
Yeah.
I don't have it in me to do that.
Well, there's a problem in that in of itself as well for the individual who is doing it. So you can say to them, you can have those unrealistic and very specific expectations, and the person who goes and does it, and Ike had this problem, right? Yeah, and so actually, speaking of which, we should probably get Ike on here because
he'd be phenomenal.
He's a great case study in I struggled for so fucking long, and eventually got in, but my God, was it a slog of talking to people who had unrealistic expectations and in some cases didn't seem to know what they were hiring for. But
and it's funny because he did that time. Right, sorry to jump in, but it's funny because he did that time. But he's probably one of the first people to say, but you don't necessarily have to.
No, but then the biggest problem that he had is going from service desk and starting as service desk, and I think he was in that sort of that kind of role because that's what suited him at the time. But then when he wanted to make the jump into cybersecurity, the only thing that he would get contacted for was help desk. He was like, I don't want to do this. I've made it very, very clear. And this is kind of where I talk about, the recruiters who do not know what the fuck they're doing or don't know what they're recruiting for. You've very, very specifically got it in the head of your LinkedIn profile or in the opening,
right? Yeah, the header or the
header speech about me bit of your resume. Cybersecurity, and they're still going, oh, we're recruiting for a service desk. Like, no, fuck off. I don't want that. I'm not interested.
Yeah. Hey, I still get contacted for things that would leverage my old Series 7 and Series 66, and I haven't had those in 11 years,
Nah.
12 years now. So,
It's
do you
like,
want to sell insurance somewhere? No, I don't want to. Leave me alone.
do you want to sell insurance? I mean, well,
Cyber insurance, maybe.
we could have a chat if you wanted, but the first thing I'm going to tell you is those qualifications have expired. You still want to have the chat?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
I'm always getting stuff about like security engineer stuff, and you need to know SQL and .NET. And I was like,
Yeah.
I know a little bit of SQL, but .NET, and
Or
you
like
need to be able to code in
firewall rules.
Python and do PHP and blah blah blah, blah all this sort of stuff. I was like, have you not read my profiles? Human, behavioral psychology, all that sort of stuff, and it's just ridiculous.
Sure.
But yeah, we should get Ike
Actually,
on at some point, because
I'm legit making a second note here.
He's a great potential guest for this.
And he's I could rave about him for hours. So I guess I'll stop after he just blends that human side as well as just keep on shoring up the technical side, and he has it and he keeps working on it. He has the soft skills and he keeps working on them. It's just that type of individual, the baseline attitude of, if I don't know it, I'll work on it. I'll take 10 of those up front any day before I go, oh, let me see somebody who has this pedigree and has worked on this system for this many years. Oh, forget all that. It's all going to be gone in 10 years anyway. But I'll still, those folks that have that attitude of like, if not, I'll learn about it. Let me get a crack at it. Let me get my hands in there. Those are the folks that you want helping you solve weird, thorny problems that arise in tech.
Well, I always remember, I mean, that attitude piece is the first place that I worked after university, said that the hiring motto was hire for attitude. And specifically when it was with graduates, I think that I was the second year of graduate intake that they had. And it was, the guy who, interestingly enough, actually, the guy who was basically head of HR there is now at Jumio. Yeah, so he's actually, I wonder if I'll actually tap up Dan. That would be a good one, because he's a really interesting guy. And it is security, but it was it's the hire for attitude piece, because the general mantra was, especially at the age that we were, early 20s, it was very clear understanding that you're not necessarily going to have the skills, but we can teach you the skills. We can't teach you how to be a good, courteous, presentable human being. Well, we could probably teach you to be presentable, but it's much easier when you already have got that appreciation
of that in the cave,
in there for it. And I remember, I think going through the assessment day and then invited back for an interview, or just sort of had a separate couple of individual interviews after the main bit of that. And was on the train back home, sent an email off to the two guys who had interviewed me on a one-on-one basis, just saying, thanks for your time. It was great to get your insight, that sort of thing. This is me at 21, just thinking just give this a go, right? Because just do a follow-up, make sure they remember you, sort of thing. And there's this one guy, Mark, who it was IT consultancy. He managed all the insurance accounts. So he kind of knew the value of the doing the follow-up piece, because these IT execs in insurance have ridiculously large budgets and that. And he saw that email, turned to Martin, who was the guy who was basically the lead recruiter, and just hire him. He's one of them right there and then. And it was that, and that's that hire for attitude piece, because he just saw something. He was just like, he'll fit in with that kind of mindset of doing the follow-up, because that's good client service in the consultancy world, for example.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about the ways that people, because you got into cybersecurity kind of the backwards route, getting all the certifications and all that sort of stuff, which I think is something a lot of people do, but they end up getting the wrong things and spending an awful lot of money on it, whereas you do it for a hobby because you're an odd individual.
I have an illness. I absolutely do. It's just like we always talk about. It's the rampant anxiety, and I funnel it into that, and I get by.
Yeah, but then and then you've got the other, because we talked about doing the service desk stuff and doing it the right way as it's touted and still struggling, and then there's me who accidentally fell into.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'll be the first one to also say, my first break-in was based on networking. It was based on somebody I knew through a
Mm,
hobby, and
yeah.
I got my first crack there.
Oh, mine wasn't even that
Yeah.
like happens. I didn't put even that much into it.
See,
It was
exactly.
it was the company that we got bought by
Hmm.
just had the capability, and I just said to the guy in the London office who ran the cyber division, like, hey, can I, what do I need to do to come and join your team? And luckily he was in a situation where he goes, look, at the moment we've got more work than we have people to do it. So here's some human stuff, which is probably the easier thing
The
to
transition
get
into.
into. Yeah.
Sure.
Which is funny because like we had a conversation some weeks ago with regards to the apprentices and the that we've got, where it was, we'll send them on rotations all the way around, and then we'll have them at the human level right at the very end because it kind of like ties everything together, and it's probably one of the things that's more difficult to get a view of holistically. Which I see the argument there
Sure. Yeah.
because you've got to, if you do go straight into the human side of it, there's lots of other things that you have to learn that are all kind of interdependent, and it can be a little bit difficult to navigate your way through it. But the irony is that the human side is the easiest to get into without prior technical skills. So it's this bizarre, perverse sort of area where
It's
it's like,
yeah.
yeah. And I don't even want to say it's like it's a learning curve like a brick wall, because it's probably not. It's just, I think it's probably a learning curve like a very, very boggy marsh.
It's
But
a
you
good
just
way to
sort of
say
get
it. Yeah.
stuck in
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yep.
But it is the one that's there's the fewest barriers to entry to it, because all that you have to do is like I say, have the right attitude, have an appreciation for risk, be able to talk to people,
Mm-hmm.
not be bored to tears by policy and compliance documentation. You know,
That helps.
yeah,
It
yeah, it does,
absolutely,
it
it
does.
absolutely does. And I just think in
Hmm.
25, if we could get some sort of shift, I think maybe we start to, like you said, I love the phrase you used, dig ourselves out of this hole versus
Hmm.
digging further.
No, no, dig up, stupid.
Exactly. Let's try, man. But
We're under a
listen.
big T. Um,
Yeah.
please tell me that reference landed there.
Yes, it did, my friend. Yeah, absolutely.
Smashing.
Absolutely did. So but I think, man, look at this. We freewheeled it.
Mm.
We
You
got
should
to a
run them
couple of,
more often.
I listen, I don't know about all that. You do a bang up job, but I just enjoyed talking to you, man. It was fun.
It's fun. It's good. It's good. Do we ever resurrect certification corner? That's a question.
I mean, I could talk about the one I just took yesterday, and it's the
Oh yeah,
end of
go
the
do. All right.
season. Sure.
Yeah, go do
So,
that. Do a quick one.
okay, really quickly and tangentially related to cybersecurity, change management. I said,
Oh, that
you know,
one.
as
Yes.
yeah, as a program manager, and ending up as a program manager was not ever on my bingo card. So again,
Hmm.
speaking to how the path can be different for anybody, and it's still a legitimate and rewarding and amazing path for folks. Change management. I saw program management and project management. I said, wait a second, there's pieces missing. Took the PMI, loved it. I truly did. As weird as it sounds, it was very dense. Even as an agile person, I still said, hey, it's great to have background in waterfall projects. But I still saw, wait a second, there's pieces of things that we're doing, projects that we're running, or initiatives that we're trying to get off the ground that aren't quite doing what they should do. There's elements missing.
Hmm.
Did some research and I said, wait a second, you know what I think I'm deficient on and I could help out the crew back at the homestead with is a little bit of change management. So did my research there, try to look to see what sort of certifications there were for that. And the Association of Change Management Professionals, fancy enough, it's right there in the title, has a change management professional certification. I have to say, I love it's sort of niche. It's something that you can tuck under, say, a project management sort of schema.
Hmm.
But what I loved is that it was niche, but it still had developed material to learn from and work towards. Because sometimes when you go off on these walks and you want to do some backfilling of gaps, they're gaps for a reason. There's not a lot of materials out there, and you end up shooting in the dark. There's a couple of certs I remember taking where, heck, I can even say, and I don't want to call this out. Maybe I do. Depends on how petty I want to get. But there were some materials out there for other certs, not this one, that I completely went into this test unprepared. This is
Mm.
bonkers. And as you can ask my wife, that's the one in particular where I took the full 4 hours to figure this thing out because I was walking in the wilderness. I said, "Oh no, I got to put my boots on if I'm gonna walk out of here with a pass." Oh man, right? This is
Yeah.
the type of fight it's gonna be, like Big Trouble in Little China. So the change management professional, it fills in the gaps in terms of how handling the people side of change, people side of project management. I feel so project management's all about getting the timelines, getting your resources lined up, making sure things can gel, making sure the technical applications of what you're trying to change actually work
Hmm.
and work not just on your machine, but work for everyone. The CCMP is a little bit more, and I love this aspect of it because it's what I was missing. It's a little bit more focused on is the org, is the group, is the department, is the division. How is it ready for this change?
Mm.
Assess whether it is, and it has a very rigorous sort of checklist to go through and say, did you look at this? Did you look at learning and development? Did you look at the vision? Did you look at how things tie together? Did you look at other changes that are occurring at the same time? Taking a much more holistic view and really preparing early and rigorously to before you even jump in and say, let's go, let's try to figure it out. Which anyone that works with me, yourself included, knows I could use sometimes a little bit more of a let's prep versus fuck it, let's just try it. Let's.
Yeah.
Um, it's still that's still going to be my nature, but at least now I have some checklists to look over before I just walk into let's go for this. Why not? I truly love the material. There's a lot of good quality material out there. It was relatively in the line of what you're going to see for other sort of certs like this. So
Hmm.
about $700, $800 for the cert. Now, the one thing that I will say was not clear on, it's not all moonbeams and rainbows. I wasn't quite clear on for the preparation for the cert that you needed to have 21 hours of verified training. Not necessarily so exactly. And now you know where this is going, Robin. Those 21 hours are provided by certain providers that are approved and has another cost associated with it. So
That are
where
approved, in other words, getting
yes,
a kickback
a
or
thousand
giving a
percent. It's
kickback.
listen, Tammany Hall is alive and well in many instances. This I feel is one of them. However, I will say that the training material, once you get past the fact that it was a surprise cost, at least me
Hmm.
having even read the application process and then going, hey, wait a minute, I have to, oh goodness. The material was great too. However, it was an additional cost. So all in, it was about $1,600 for, and that's where exactly you start to get into that realm of bang for the buck. I personally feel in terms of for my repertoire
Hmm.
and the gaps that I feel needed a little bit more cementing and backfilling, get some putty in there to make the wall look
Yeah.
good. I think it helped. I'm going to try to, you tell me, right? We can have a visit back in a few months and see if I'm a little bit more measured when we're trying to institute changes in our department. So I felt it was a net positive. It's a process I would recommend. It's a cert I would recommend. It's 150 questions. They give you 3 hours to do it. The prep materials that are out there are very good in both ways. The two ways that I seek materials to be good, they don't have you walking in going, what the hell is this when it's test day? I think,
Okay.
I'm not advocating test dumps, but I also don't want to be completely blindsided by subject matter when I walk in,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So there's that. And the material is good on its face because I downloaded the standard, the change management standard. It's something I'm going to
Yeah.
have on my desktop just to help me out in terms of if we're getting anything
Hmm.
major that we're going to push through because it was a really nice and it was relatively succinct. It was like about 70 pages. It's not
Hmm.
nearly like you and I both know the Pinbock is at like 300, I think, at this point, and the PGMP one is at like
Yeah.
400 and change. They can get a little little thick, a little robust. This one is nice and neat at 75 pages, and I feel it's something I'm going to have as a reference. I'm going to go back to it. I'm gonna go and grab it. It's also available free. It's not necessarily that you have to go out and get the
Oh,
cert
that's
to
good.
get it. The change management standard is legit, and it is free. It's a living document. So all in all, I do recommend it, but just going in, know
Mm.
that the training is going to be in addition to sitting for the exam itself, and that's going to almost double your nut when you go in.
I'm not keen on that. It's like going on Ryanair and seeing that you can go to, I don't know, like Marbella for 49 euros. But if you wanna get on the plane and not have the
You want to
stewardesses
ride
be like,
inside the plane, not
go,
outside. It charges you more.
yeah. Or if you want to be greeted with anything other than get in your fucking seat, you bastard, then you've got to pay another 49 euros, right?
I saw that
Sit down and
service in my
shut up.
mind. I saw them. I can picture. I have a very distinct picture, and because
Do you
I
want to go to
love
the toilet?
viewership,
10 euro.
it's there's behind a paywall. But you're
No,
absolutely
legitimately,
correct.
Michael O'Leary has said that if he can find out a viable way to charge people to go to the toilet on a Ryanair plane, he will. Which
I
is,
think that's just leading to nonsense because people are just then going to start peeing in the aisles. You asked for it.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Michael O'Leary asked for it. Victim blaming. All right. Well, on that bombshell, should we leave it there?
Yes, we should. We should.
So next episode will be just the news, as it is every fortnight. Feature news. And yeah, we'll just see you again next Monday. Thank you very much for joining. If you haven't already, hit the like, subscribe, share it around to other people. Give us a rating on Spotify or wherever else you get your podcast. I actually don't know where else. I know there's iHeartRadio, there's Amazon. For some reason, I can't find it on Apple. I think I didn't do it right. But yeah, like and comment and subscribe and rate nicely, like 5 stars, please, anywhere that there is. And then, yeah, we'll see you next week. And if you don't rate nicely, I'll just piss off into the ether and you'll never see it again.
He will. So please.
No, I joke. I'm being dramatic. Anyway, but bye.
Adios.